Hi, I'm Femi OK. Thanks for joining the stream today. For 2 days last week, Israel carried out a large-scale military assault on the refugee camp in Jenin in the occupied West Bank. How many months or years will it take the citizens there to rebuild their lives? We are looking at the lasting impact of the Jenin raid. YouTube is right here. The comment section is live. We'd like you to take part in the discussion.
The destruction that happened in the camp is enormous. A whole machined army, dozens of bulldozers entered the camp and destroyed the entire infrastructure. As you can see, they damaged the streets, the water lines, the sewage system, even the rainwater drainage system. The electrical lines were hit the first day. They targeted the generators and disconnected electricity. As for communication, the internet, phones, and so on, this didn't exist in the first place.
So much to talk about. Joining us here in the studio, a familiar face, Omar Badar. Omar is a political analyst and human rights advocate based in Washington, D.C. On Skype, joining us from Ramallah in the occupied West Bank, Diana Boutou. Diana is a lawyer and former advisor to the negotiating team of the Palestine Liberation Organization. And from Jenin, Ayman Youssef, a professor of international relations and conflict resolution at the Arab American University in Palestine. Ooh, guess, where do we even start? If you're in Jenin today, what are you thinking? What are you having to do? Ayman, will you start?
Yes, I think, first of all, I would like to thank you, Femi, to be in this show, to host me in this show. And I think the major question from, what is next? The city is healing. People are trying to return to their normal life and normal conditions, but the situation is really difficult, for them. I think the major thing at this stage, people still have the fear that the Israeli army might raid again on the camp, but this time in different way. Strategically speaking and realistically speaking, I would like to say that Israel will not raid the refugee camp in the same way as they did in this comprehensive way, bringing more than thousands, of soldiers and hundreds of vehicles. But I think this time they will go for a kind of hit and run away, collecting, very specific, let us say, intelligence information on the Palestinian, resistance group, Palestinian, militants, and they try to do, direct killing. I think the Israelis will intend to change their strategy, but at the same time, I think the Palestinians, local Palestinians, including resistance group in the refugees camps, are also putting their plans and their strategies, modifying their strategies, to hit and to do more military operations.
Professor, let me just bring in Diana here. Ayman said that the people of Jenin are healing. How do you heal that fast, Diana?
You don't. That's the problem. And I think I think we make a mistake when we think of healing in the sense that is beyond Palestinian healing. What they're doing is they're getting themselves prepared for the very next attack. Femi, one thing that struck me, I was just in the camp the other day, is that this is generation after generation after generation that has seen these types of Israeli attacks against them. There was one family that described for me what it was like for their blind son, who was taken. He was handcuffed. He was taken to a military base several kilometers away, and then forced to walk home back to the Jenin refugee camp barefoot. This is the exact same walk that his grandfather did back in 1948. So there is no real healing. It's just a question of anticipating the next attack. And even Dr. Ayman, as he's describing it, he's talking about what is going to happen next. And I think instead we should be talking about how to hold Israel accountable so that we don't have another next. We are talking about people who are just constantly in this state of trauma, day after day after day.
Femi, just off of what Diana was saying, it's important to note that what we've seen in Jenin is certainly an uptick in intensity, but it's not really different in kind from what Israel metes out to Palestinians on a regular basis. Just since the raid in Jenin, 3 more Palestinians were killed in the city of Nablus. The person who murdered an autistic Palestinian, Iyad Hallaq, the soldier who did it, has been acquitted of that crime. This is the daily violence and oppression that Palestinians live under day after day. There is literally not a day that goes by without somebody's home being demolished, without somebody being harassed or taunted at a checkpoint. This is just the reality that people exist under. And whenever people get organized, as they have in Jenin, in terms of some militant resistance, Israel metes out far greater massacres. So this is really the message that Israel has to Palestinians. Either you accept to live without rights, where we can take your land on a whim and we can harass you and just basically violate your rights on a daily basis, and you take that and do nothing, or if you organize against it, then you're going to see what the real weight of the Israeli military is. And that's a situation that's untenable. No people on the planet anywhere would agree to live without rights the way Palestinians are being forced to live under decade after decade of Israeli occupation.
Omar, I want to play you some video. This is Abed Shalabi, and he is looking at around where he lives in Jenin. And I'm just going to show you this video and then immediately come off the back of it. And what Abed is talking about is the damage that surrounds his home. Let's have a look.
There is no hope. The young people at the camp look to the future and see no hope. There are no projects. Israel has destroyed everything that could be built here. There is no two-state solution. There is no hope for political solutions, neither from the authorities' side nor from the occupation side. They have destroyed everything.
Yeah, I think that this is a perfect description of what Palestinians go under. And that point that he made is really critical, that there is no prospect for a political settlement of this. There was a pretense of a peace process at some point under the leadership of the United States, where there might be a Palestinian state and Palestinian self-determination. But at this point, that entire facade has just completely fallen to the ground. And the Israeli government is very clear about the fact that they would never allow for Palestinian self-determination to exist. So that's the situation that we're actually in.
Professor, will you remind us your title, your job title, what you teach?
Yes, I teach political science, international relations, Palestinian question, conflict resolution, and comparative peace to all levels, BA, Master, and PhD.
Conflict resolution. What are you teaching your students now, having seen that Jenin raid? Why do you even go to work?
You know, indeed, I got the idea of this healing from this huge literature in conflict resolution and in peace studies. And frankly speaking, it is a huge task, very complex task for any Palestinian professor to teach conflict resolution and peace studies for Palestinian students who are living in Jenin or in Ramallah. You know, at this level, we are trying to shift our teaching and our experiences with the students from conflict resolution to conflict transformation. We believe the conflict is not, you know, easily to be resolved with the current Israeli government, with the current occupation. And if conflict resolution is equal to normalization, it is totally, you know, rejected by, you know, our generations. Therefore, I think we are building a Palestinian school of thought of conflict resolution and peace studies on the basis of, you know, right for, you know, for full right to, you know, self-determination, right to return, and to fix people on land and to solidify, you know, their, you know, resilience. The word healing people in Jenin are really determined, you know, to go for the next round of clashes with the Israeli army, and they are well prepared at, you know, factional level as well as, you know, at social level. And I think they are in the process of reformulating, rebuilding their strategies and their, you know, military thoughts in order to have more sustainable battle with the occupation force.
I want you, Diana, to have a listen to this resident of Jenin who asks a very pertinent question. Have a listen and see if you can answer the question that she poses. Here she is.
The children are so scared. Where do we go now? They destroyed the home while we were in it. We had to escape. Look at the children. They're terrified. They're barefoot. We had to leave so quickly. After they finished destroying our homes, they arrested people and have taken all our young men. We don't have any water or electricity. Where is the rest of the Arab world?
The question, she's absolutely right. And it's not just where's the rest of the Arab world, where's the world? we're talking about Israel, a nuclear power force that is dropping missiles on a refugee camp that they created the problem of, and that they still continue to attack these refugee camps day after day after day. I was around in 2002 when Israel attacked the Jenin refugee camp and practically destroyed it in 2002, and went back again this time after this attack. And what I can tell you from what she has said, and I share the same experience, is that the children didn't heal from the 2002 experience. Those children are now in their 20s and late 20s, if not 30s, and they still haven't healed. And this time around, the attack on the camp, the attack on the infrastructure on the camp was just so much worse. Israel's taken a decision that it wants to eliminate Palestinians. It wants to wipe us off the map, and they want to wipe off the camps off the map as well, because the camps are the last remaining reminder of what Israel did in 1948 during the Nakba. And the big question is, where is the world? Why is it that this woman who is unprotected, who doesn't have a police force, they don't have an army, we don't have anything, why is it that Israel's allowed to attack this refugee camp, cut off the electricity
Diana,
supply?
you know the answer to the question that you are asking. You know the answer. In a sentence, say it. Just say it.
It's complete impunity. That's the answer, is that we have given Israel the green light to do whatever it is that it wants to do. And short of it perpetrating a large-scale, wholesale massacre on Palestinians, I don't think the world is going to move. And even if they do that, I don't think the world is going to move.
Why? I'm asking Diana's question, she just answered it. But what is wrong with I hate this phrase, international community? Because sometimes we act and sometimes we don't.
Look, there's no question that there's a lot of responsibility that can be laid in many places, but I think the role of the United States here is absolutely critical. You know, the United States weighed in on this, in this case, talking about Israel's right to self-defense in the context of Israel attacking this refugee camp. You have a U.S. government that is obsessed with the rights of invaders and occupiers to so-called self-defense, but never uttering a word about the right of the occupied to defend themselves or to resist that occupation and invasion. And what makes it even more grotesque is the fact that the U.S. is supplying the Israeli army with billions of weapons every single year. So when you compare it to, say, Russia and Ukraine, U.S. policy in Ukraine is to arm the Ukrainians so that they can fend off a foreign invasion and occupation. But in Israel and Palestine, U.S. policy is to fund the occupation and invasion of a civilian population.
Omar,
it is absolutely infuriating. It's a level of hypocrisy that is really breathtaking.
I want to share a clip with you, which I'm sure you've seen before, but this is for the benefit of our audience. So this clip is the White House press secretary speaking just a few days ago. And this was her immediate answer to a question from a reporter. The reporter asked, among the 12 Palestinians who were killed in Jenin operation carried out by Israel, 4 were under the age of 18. Does the White House have an assessment of whether they were indeed all combatants or whether any civilians were killed? That was the end of the question. Hear the beginning of the answer.
So here's what I'll say. You know, we, as you all know, and we have said this many times, we support certainly Israel's security and right to defend its people against Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and other terrorist groups. It is imperative to take all possible steps to protect civilians from harm.
American government officials sound like broken bots off of these sound bits. Every time, it is all they have to say about this is Israel has the right to defend itself, and it's completely devoid from what the question is, from what the reality is on the ground, and it's at the point where it's out of sync with where the rest of the world is. Yeah. The UN keeps condemning Israeli policies and occupation and atrocities, but nobody can ever take action because the US keeps using its veto at the UN to stop any meaningful accountability for Israel. So this is really a big part of where the problem is.
Diana, you should...
And how about even beyond that, these are lines that they have practiced. For her, it doesn't matter how many Palestinians were killed. It doesn't matter that they were children. It doesn't matter that the rubble was dropped on their heads. All that matters is that she has practiced a line in front of a mirror, and that's the only thing that she knows how to say, and she won't even veer 1 centimeter from the practiced lines. That just shows you how bankrupt U.S. policy is when it comes to Israel. If you can't even respond to a question, if you can't condemn the killing of children, then why are you in this game? Why pretend that you're a superpower when at the end of the day, it's clear that Israel's the superpower, not the United States?
Did I read too much into the White House press secretary's body language? She almost looked bored with the question, like, oh, this question again. Am I overreading that?
Not at all. I think it's because they know that they have a canned response for this, that it's not a question that they intend to deal with in any substantive way. It is simply what they do on this particular question. They know basically the standard position from the administration is we don't want to deal with what Israel does that we don't like. We're just going to defend it no matter what. So whenever a question comes up, it is just practicing that standard talking point with utter disregard for the lives of Palestinians, including Palestinian children, as Diana pointed out.
Dr. Ayman, I am going to ask you to do a speed round, okay? This is normally not how you work as a professor, but I've got several questions coming in for our audience on YouTube. I want you to give them a one-sentence response or answer, so very brief. Onuchi says, the UN is just sitting and watching. Dr. Ayman, your response.
Yes, unfortunately, different players at international, community level, including the UN, are not dealing with the fundamental problem of occupation, and instead of that, they are, focusing on the human needs and the human fragilities. I think the main problem with the occupation, and I think they should convey a clear message to Israel that they are a destructive, occupational force in the West Bank, and it is not their right to invade, Palestinian cities every now and then, especially when we have, a peace agreement and a Palestinian Authority, in Palestine.
All right, another speedy response, Dr. Ayman, if you can. When they fight back, when Palestinians fight back, they are labelled as terrorists. Shaking my head.
Unfortunately, this is the stereotype, prejudgment, images about, the Palestinians. Although international, humanitarian law guarantees, full support to all nations under occupation to fight back and, their right for self-determination. Therefore, I think, many Palestinians feel this double standard on the part, of international community when it comes to Palestine and Israel.
Diana, I've got one for you. I hope you don't mind sharing the heavy lifting, Dr. Ayman. This one is from Good Life, who's watching on YouTube right now. Is it possible that Netanyahu is increasing tensions to cover his war crime allegations? Is that possible?
Absolutely. We know that one of the reasons that they've been going into Jenin and into Nablus and to other places in the West Bank is because he wants to hold on to this coalition. And the reason he wants to hold on to this coalition is because he's facing corruption charges within Israel. So yes, of course, we know that. And the problem is that we as Palestinians pay for his corruption charges with our lives. We pay for it on our backs, on our skin.
I'm going to push on a little bit because we were talking about, at the beginning of the show, the lasting impact of the Jenin raid. And just a few days after it's happened, grieving is still happening. It's still fresh. I want to show you Hassam Mashoud, who lost his son, Noor Eldin. Let's have a look. Daughter, excuse me.
His friend was injured. We saw my son rushing out to the hospital. He was saying, I want to go to the hospital. I want to go to the hospital. I told him not to go. I had a feeling that something would happen. Then I told his siblings, go after your brother.
So that's really why we are all here, because we're talking about something that's so incredibly painful, real people's lives, not politics. Omar, so when we're looking at the lasting impact of this particular raid, there's so many milestones in this history between the Palestinians and the Israelis that make us pause and say, did something change there? Was that a moment? What is this Jenin raid, this latest one? What does it mean?
Look, in terms of Israel's goals for this raid, I don't think this changes anything. This does not bring stability, it does not bring peace, it does not bring security to anyone. All this raid has done is set the ground for the next round of violence. It is inevitable. Again, because the fundamental issue has not been dealt with, is that you cannot hold Palestinians without human rights for decade after decade and expect nothing to change. Now, expect actually things to improve in any way. That's just not going to happen. Now, the way this is different is that, to me, it marked a weakening of the Palestinian Authority. Israel has relied on the Palestinian Authority to some extent to take care of security in Palestinian areas. The Palestinian Authority was created under allegedly to kind of provide Palestinian self-governance towards Palestinian independence. When that has been shown to be a complete fabrication and is not really leading anywhere, the function of the Palestinian Authority became essentially to subcontract and carry the burden of occupation off of Israel so that they don't have to do it directly. Who collects the garbage, who runs the schools, who runs security in particular cities. But that has made the Palestinian Authority more and more irrelevant. And as the Palestinian Authority loses security control of major Palestinian cities, I think this raid signals that Israel feels now the necessity to go in itself and provide and essentially try to enforce that security of the occupation directly instead of relying on Palestinian Authority to do it.
Dr. Ayman, you're looking thoughtful. Go ahead.
Yes, I think the Palestinian Authority, yes, is weak, but still it is an actor. It is an international community interest, including the U.S. and Israel, to keep the PA with certain tasks and certain responsibilities, because they don't want to have a power vacuum. At least in West Bank. Israel, to some extent, succeeded in creating a kind of deterrence in Gaza, and they realized that, Hamas and Islamic Jihad are trying, to bring, the battle to West Bank. This is, strategically, important. Therefore, I think, weak PA is in the Israeli interest in order to run, local affairs, local municipalities, and to handle certain security issues in some cities, maybe in Ramallah and in the south of West Bank. In the north of West Bank, I think Israel is taking now the lead in crushing the Palestinians, in crushing the resistance group. And the BA, unfortunately, is not, taking part in showing, a real, political rhetoric. I think they fail at, at media level, at political, rhetoric level. And unfortunately, the Palestinian alternatives are very much, narrow and very much, limited at this stage.
Earlier, we spoke to Nabil, who is a spokesperson for the Palestine Red Crescent Society. Nabil reminded us why, when we're talking about Palestinians, they are treated so much more differently than other citizens, particularly when it's a situation where it's a humanitarian crisis. She explains it beautifully here. Have a look.
Ambulances were prevented from accessing the camp to deliver critical medical care. In one case, an ambulance was in its way to transfer a pregnant woman who was in labor. The ambulance was obstructed, and even the Israeli forces hit the front of the ambulance and threatened the medical teams who were unable to transfer the woman to the hospital. So while ambulances and first responders enjoy safe access to deliver emergency medical care to civilians in armed conflicts, this is not the case for Palestinian medical missions.
Just right there, in that conversation, we see what is so difficult in Jenin and for Palestinians. What's your final thought, Omar?
Look, I think there's a very significant level of dehumanization of Palestinians, including with the comment that you mentioned about, Palestinians being described as terrorists when they fight back.
Yeah.
What Israel carries out in terms of massive bombing areas that every human rights organization in the world says are reckless and indiscriminate, when there's deliberate targeting of medical personnel and journalists, that is terrorism. There's no question about it. It is state terrorism. And nothing will fundamentally change until Israel finally starts viewing Palestinians as equal human beings who are deserving of every freedom and every right that Israelis are entitled to. And once Palestinians are treated as equals, we can proceed in a better direction. And until that happens, we are stuck in endless violence that will just bring absolutely nothing good.
See, Dr. Ayman is the most hopeful voice in our conversation today. Why do you think that is, Diana? Why do you think he's so hopeful? He's sitting in Jenin right now. Why is he so hopeful?
Because you can't stay alive without hope. And I think that that he is the person who is on the front lines of this, and he has to remain hopeful. And I actually do want to end with a little bit of a hopeful note. You know, Israel came in and said that the reason that they were going in...
You've got
Yes.
one sentence, otherwise you're crashing into the news. Go ahead.
Right. So they said that they were going in to crush Palestinians, and in the end,
Thank you, Deanna.
it turned out...
Thank you, Ayman. Thank you, Omar. You can't stay alive without hope. I'll leave you with that. Thanks for watching, everybody. See you next time.